Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I thought we'd start off by reading your bio, just to kind of give everyone a background of where you've been, what you've been doing, and how accomplished you are.
Thank you.
All right, Judge Brooke Wells served as a full-time magistrate judge for the United States District Court for the District of Utah from 2003 until her retirement on June 3rd, 2019. Judge Wells received her Bachelor's of Science degree in Political Science from the University of Utah and then continued on to receive her Juris Doctorate degree also from the University of Utah. Following graduation, she spent 3 years as a legal services lawyer in San Antonio, Texas. She then returned to Utah and worked for the Salt Lake Legal Defenders Association for 15 years, where she tried over 100 felony jury trials and rose to become the chief capital qualified defense attorney in the state, responsible for handling the most difficult cases in our criminal justice system. During much of that time, Judge Wells was also an adjunct professor and trial advocacy course coordinator for the University of Utah S.J. Quinney College of Law. Before taking the bench, Judge Wells also worked as an assistant United States attorney for over 8 years, during which time she prosecuted violent crimes and civil rights cases and became the chief of the violent crimes section. In 2003, Judge Wells was appointed as the first woman United States Magistrate Judge for the District of Utah. She served as the Chief United States Magistrate Judge from 2013 through 2017. In addition to her regular judicial duties, she presided over Utah's RISE reentry courts, among the first federal drug court programs in the country and the first federal behavioral health court with a mental health court specialized docket. She is the past president of the David K. Watkis Sutherland II Inn of Court and former member of the Board of Trustees of the Disability Law Center, Legal Aid Society of Salt Lake, and Community Counseling Center. Judge Wells has served as a mentor for the Utah State Bar's new lawyer training program. Women Lawyers of Utah named Judge Wells as the 1988 Woman Lawyer of the Year. Judge Wells became the first woman inducted into the American Board of Criminal Lawyers in 1992. Also in 1992, Governor Mike Leavitt's Commission for Women and Families named her one of 10 remarkable Utah women. In 1993, she became the first Utah woman inducted into the American College of Trial Lawyers. While a federal prosecutor, she was twice recognized by the Department of Justice for outstanding achievement as an assistant United States attorney. In 2013, Judge Wells was the recipient of the Women Lawyers of Utah Mentoring Award. In 2015, the Utah Minority Bar Association awarded Judge Wells its Distinguished Service Award. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI Utah, awarded her its Distinguished Service Award in 2017. She was named the Alumnus of the Year by the University of Utah's S.J. Quinney College of Law in 2018 and was its graduation speaker in 2016.
You reminded me of some things that I'd forgotten. I'd first like to acknowledge Leslie, who I first met as a new lawyer mentee, which was a requirement after she had graduated from law school. She then became my clerk and has since been my very dear friend. Thank you, Leslie, for doing this for me.
Thank you. A lot of firsts in that biography. What's it like to be the first in so many things?
Well, I don't really think of it as being the first in things. I think that I was part of a generation of young women lawyers who were being given opportunities for the first time to hold judicial positions and to be associated with some of those organizations that you met. But if it means that women lawyers and judges can achieve things not only for themselves but as role models for others, then that makes me proud.
You're not retired, or are you retired? What are you doing these days?
Well, I'm mostly retired. I retired formally in 2019, but am on recall status, which means I come in here when I'm needed. A few weeks ago, I spent almost a week covering the criminal calendars so that all our magistrate judges could attend a judicial conference in St. George. I also cover the specialty courts because I know them quite well. So I do that. My other passion outside of the courts is horses. And so I spend a great deal of time with my horse now, Tough. And Tough is a pretty fancy pants guy who lives in a horse condo out in West Jordan. But I spend a great deal of time riding, and last was involved in showing him last year. I don't know if I'm going to be showing again, but we'll see. I also spend most of each day visiting with my husband, Cale, of almost 28 years, that lives in the Sunrise senior living community. And I have my furry best friend at home, Jax, my dog. So I have pretty full days and a lot of friends who keep me busy.
So on the subject of horses, how did you start riding? Tell us a little bit about how you developed this passion for horses.
I'm an Okie, and I lived, my parents and I was the oldest of 3 children, and we lived near a riding stable. I just loved horses, and my parents got me some lessons, and so I started showing my horse or horses at the age of 5 and carried that on. Unfortunately, at about 16, I think I gave up most of my riding for boys, which probably wasn't the best decision to make, but I took it up again once I moved to Utah and have been riding along with my husband ever since.
As you said, you're from Oklahoma, so how did you get to Utah? Tell us about that.
Well, to give you a little background about myself, as I said, I was the oldest of 3 children, and our father, who was a really well-known lawyer in Oklahoma City, and as family lore has it, was under consideration for Secretary of Labor at the time of his death when I was aged 11. That left my mother at 38 with a widow with 3 children, the youngest of which was 3. My father and mother, though, had set aside some amount of money, enough for me and my younger brother and my sister to attend 2 years of college. Well, after my second year at Oklahoma State University, I, along with a group of female friends, took off for the Wild West and had a summer working at Lake Tahoe. I was a waitress in the coffee shop. My best recollection is being tipped $100 by Danny Thomas that I served coffee and scrambled eggs to in the middle of the night. But while I was in Lake Tahoe, I met a guy, Doug Wells, whose last name I still carry, who was from California, but was a athlete at the University of Utah. We married a year later, and after he finished his military service, we moved back here. It was during the Vietnam era, but he wasn't required to serve there. He served as the lieutenant at Nike site on Malibu Beach. And I think probably the heaviest duty he saw was returning the lost dog of a Playboy playmate. Nonetheless, we had a when he got out of the service, a 9-month-old boy, Jason, when we moved here for him to finish school. And that's what brought me here to Salt Lake City.
So did you begin your studies at the University of Utah then, or when did you?
I was always told by my mother that I should have skills to fall back on. Although she had gone to college, she was a wife of the 50s and had no real experience in the work world. So I became a pretty good typist, and when I moved here, I became a legal secretary, where I worked for about a year and a half, and then I took a position as a secretary at the University of Utah and was a secretary to the Student Governance Council. And somehow they saw promise in me, and a year or two later made me the student activities or student body advisor. And as such, they allowed me to finish my undergrad degree, which I did in political science. So I was a secretary until I went to law school.
So one law school, I mean, it sounds like your father was an attorney. Did you always want to be an attorney, or what brought you to law school?
I always wanted to be. I think he may have died at a time in my life when hero worship was at its foremost. He would take me to work with him sometimes and to court. And he was a courtroom lawyer, and I always believed I could do that, but I didn't believe I would ever have the opportunity as a woman to go to law school.
So what pushed you to do it?
Well, I had made good friends at the University of Utah and had been encouraged to apply. I was then, as I said, divorced. I had a 4-year-old child. We were on food stamps at the time, and yet I wanted to apply. And I did so only at the University of Utah, not because I didn't think it was a great school, because it was, but rather because it was the only place I could have afforded to go, because I was then a Utah resident. So I applied, and I was waitlisted through into the summer before school began in August. And then one day I got the dreaded thin envelope. And back in those days, a thin envelope meant a single-page letter telling you you had not been accepted. But I was encouraged by the former boss at the U and student body president at the law school, Randy Dreyer, that I should go to the admissions director at the law school and tell him that if there was an opening of any kind before the semester started, that I would take it and go. And a week or so later, with 2 weeks' notice, I got the fat envelope. And the fat envelope meant it had papers to fill out and return. So I hastily made the best plans I could and started law school with the class of 1974.
Were there a lot of women in law school?
At that time, there were about a third of us in our law school class. The year before had about the same amount, but we were the first two classes with any significant amount or number of women who were participants.
I hear you had another famous classmate in law school. Tell us about that person.
I did. One of my classmates and acquaintances was Ted Bundy, and probably the most notorious student to have attended the University of Utah Law School, and I'm sure they wouldn't want to know that I had brought that up. But yes, I was acquainted with him. I didn't fit the traditional mold that of Ted's victims. They were tall and slim and had long hair parted down the middle. But I did join with him and a group of friends on Saturday evenings at the pub over in Trolley Square, where all of us who could afford it would pitch in on a pitcher of beer and enjoy our time together.
Were you shocked because he was arrested during law school, right?
He was arrested during our start of our second year of law school, and one of the stories about that was, and let me go back a little bit, a few weeks before we had a fall picnic and softball game out at Fields in Murray. And I was always in charge of, I was secretary of the student body at that time, Randy Dreyer again being president. And we were out of beer. It's twice I've mentioned beer now, but we were out of beer, and so I said, I'm gonna go to the store and I'll get some more to bring back to this event. And Ted stepped up and said, well, I'll take you.
Oh.
Well, what I didn't know is that Randy Dreyer had been apprised that Ted was about to be arrested for kidnapping out in Fashion Place Mall and various burglaries, and was a suspect in homicides. And so Randy stepped in and said, no, so-and-so, a guy, will go with you to, in the famous Volkswagen to buy the beer.
Wow. So Randy might have saved you.
Well, Randy likes to tell that story, that he saved me.
So, but still, I mean, when he was arrested, what was the atmosphere like?
Well, we'd all been indoctrinated at that time with criminal law and due process. And so I think that we convinced ourselves as a group that we should support Ted. And so many of us, including myself, went to see parts of his trial that was held down in the Salt Lake County Courthouse at the time. And what money we could, we pitched in for his legal defense fund.
Wow. So you thought he was innocent in the beginning?
Yes, I think it wasn't until later, after he had been charged in Colorado and then escaped from the courthouse and or two facilities in Colorado and ended up charged in Florida, that I might have changed my mind.
Yeah, maybe. Huh. Wow. That's quite the classmate to have.
Yes.
So after law school, you left Utah.
I did.
Why did you leave Utah?
I left. I had a job offer for one. I never checked my class standing. I didn't expect that I was at the top, and I didn't want to work for a firm. And I had this opportunity to go to Texas. The fellow that I had been going with for a year or two had been killed in an accident up in the Grand Tetons, a climbing accident, and I just needed to go. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Texas, took the Texas bar, and spent the next 2 years 2.5 to 3 years, working as a Utah legal services lawyer, where I did primarily domestic work. And that's where I tried my first cases, was in San Antonio.
Do you remember your first case that you tried?
I do remember it. It was a custody case, and I represented the mother whose husband had taken the children from her in Florida and moved them to Texas. And Texas assumed jurisdiction over the children, and so tried the matter and didn't win the case, but won it on appeal. And she eventually got her children returned to her. So that was the first one.
And then you obviously got the trial bug then. I mean,
I'd had the trial bug, and I did. I felt comfortable in the courtroom. I was not comfortable doing what you did for me, which was research and writing. That was not my forte. My forte was moving around a courtroom and cross-examination, those things that I loved, and my husband still thinks that I'm too good at. So,
how did you develop that? I mean, it takes a certain level of confidence, I think, a person to have those skills.
you know, when I was a child, my parents always found things for us to do, activities to do. And one of those activities was attending, it's called the Mary Gray Thompson School of Speech and, speech. And we were taught to project our voices, unlike what I can do now, but and how to speak publicly without being frightened, how to memorize things. So I think that's where I got that.
So how old were you when they sent you to this school?
Oh, that was probably in about the 6th grade. So, but I also took fencing lessons.
Wow.
No good at that. Cooking lessons, not particularly good at that. My best friend from Oklahoma, Lynn, and I attended the same church, St. Paul's Episcopal Cathedral in Oklahoma City, and we were in the choir. And it wasn't because of our voices. It was because I think they needed bodies to fill up those pews as a youth choir. So despite the kind of tragic loss of my father, and he was only 45 when he died, my mother did her best to raise us, to have lots of interests and things of that sort.
So tell us a little bit about your father and how he died and all of that.
He died, he was a World War II vet. He was in the JAG Corps, and he always used to talk about, he was tall and slim and handsome. He used to talk about how he marched into Paris with the Liberation Group and wearing a kilt. Well, that was because he was stationed at Scotland with the JAG Corps ready to get in. He had a heart attack on his 45th birthday, and he was at home, and that was just at the time before they began doing bypass surgeries, things of that nature. And so while he came back on the next Valentine's Day, also while I was at home and my friend Lynn was spending the night, our mother came and told me to get ready, that Lynn's parents were there to get us, that he'd had another heart attack. I didn't know until the next day that he had died. But he was the strong component of our household. And my mother always used to say, and she was a religious person, he took the wrong one, because she had not, although she had been a Braniff Airlines stewardess, she hadn't worked outside the home since those days, and it was really a difficult path for her. She then suffered from breast cancer when I was in my first year of undergrad at Oklahoma State. So it was a rough time during that period.
And you were 11?
I was 11.
So what was and the oldest? So I mean, did you have to kind of take on more responsibilities at home, or how was life different after your father passed away?
I think I stood alongside my mother. She was strong, but this was a devastating thing for her. And but I never was in the position to have to care for the younger two. She did that, but I think in terms of life decisions and things like that, that I stood alongside her. We became very, very close and remained close until her death.
Did she encourage you at all to go to law school or follow your father's
I don't think
footsteps?
she thought that was possible for me either. That's why she pushed the secretarial skills. However, she was able to come from Oklahoma for my law school graduation, and I think was very proud. So I was glad she got to see that.
So back in San Antonio then, you tried custody cases. What else did you do in San Antonio?
Oh, San Antonio's a fun city. I ate my way through San Antonio. I made really good friends there. I liked the uniqueness of the city. It has its own flavor. And so I got to know that city quite well. But ultimately, I yearned for back here, the West and the mountains. And so I had a good possibility for a job at the Salt Lake Legal Defenders. And so I made the choice to come back here and bring my son. So I always said that my son graduated law school with me because he did. He was there. I don't always think I was the best mom in the world, but I tried.
So starting at the Salt Lake Legal Defenders then, so where did you start in the misdemeanor division?
I did. I started in the misdemeanor division, and I was there for just about a year and a half before, and there were only 4 of us. And
4 attorneys in the office?
No, 4 attorneys in the misdemeanor division.
Okay.
And I was moved to the felony division and started doing regular felony cases from that point on. And that was courtroom work every day. And I loved it. I loved it.
Any cases that stick out to you during those first couple of years that you can remember?
One of the ones that sticks out, and it was a special appointment from a state district court judge, was the case of State of Utah versus Bert Murphy. And that's the way it's pronounced, B-E-R-N-T, Murphy. He was a man who 31 years before had been found at a bench trial not guilty by reason of insanity of the rape of a youngster. He, for more background, Bert had grown up at the American Fork Training School and had an IQ of something under 70 and was described as having the mind of a 12-year-old. And he, at this bench trial, as I said, was found not guilty by reason of insanity. But at the time, the law in Utah defined insanity as including, the term at the time was mental retardation. So, in fact, Burns, who was mentally retarded, although not mentally ill, was sent to the Utah State Hospital, where he spent the next almost 33 years in custody. He was given psychotic drugs when he was never psychotic, and he was treated as though he were mentally ill. And the judge who received, Judge David D., received a referral or an appeal that had been filed on his behalf from some of the psychiatrists at the Utah State Hospital, saying that Bert, in fact, was not mentally ill and no longer posed a danger to himself or others. Now, you have to understand that had he been found guilty of these offenses and gone to prison, he would have served probably in the teen number of years, not 31 years to 33 years in a mental hospital. So Judge D asked me to take that. It was more civil in nature, and I took that case, and the first year was unsuccessful in convincing Judge D that the statute could be read any other way. But the second year of appeals, we had, I think, a week-long hearing, I can't remember. Psychiatrists testified, and I urged Judge D to require the state to find Bert a place outside of the Utah State Hospital setting. He again denied that, but invited appeal to the Utah Supreme Court. The Utah Supreme Court then issued a very lengthy opinion in which they interpreted the mental illness statute as we had proposed it to be, and found that mental retardation was a separate type of disorder and that Bert should not be held at the Utah State Hospital any longer. And eventually a group home was found for him. He was the only resident, but he hadn't lived outside of that institutional setting for all those years. And I met with him on occasion, and he once asked me to the prom at the Utah State Hospital, but I was not able to attend. And I visited we had a memorial service for him. I also want to give credit in that to the Disability Law Center, who helped me in that case. But it was significant, a change in the law and change of circumstances for that man.
It's obviously a very compelling story. I think that what appeals to me is that they didn't have any services for people like Bert. And, what was that like, kind of asking the court for something that had never really been done before?
Well, that was the point. We had to force them to do it. And, that original statute that had been put in place all those years before. The Supreme Court said to the legislature, you got to fix this. This is wrong. And so the state had to bite the bullet on that one and find him that group home. So there were no services. That's true. So it was a significant case.
What part of it compelled you the most to, what got you the most about that case?
I think it was about him and the circumstance he faced. He once was denied visitations because he turned water on at a wrong time. He kissed another patient, and he was disciplined for that. He was put on these, as I said, psychotropic drugs, which are not appropriate for one with mental retardation, and developed a terrible case of tardive dyskinesia, where you have involuntary body movements. And that was one of the things the psychiatrist pointed out. But his life would be, I think, a bit of a living hell.
And it was the psychiatrist that brought it to the court's attention. Had they not done that, he could have maybe stayed there indefinitely.
Indefinitely, until his death, yes. He died in his 50s, but, and that was a shame, but he at least had those last 10 or 12 years on.
Did he understand what was happening to him, or did he not have capacity for that?
I'm not really sure how much he understood. I know he very much wanted to leave that environment, but the process, I'm not sure how much he understood, nor did he understand what got him there, in the first place. So it was a big one.
So after that, did you have a change in your approach to your cases or your philosophy about the justice system, or, what changed after Brooke?
No, I went back to doing more of a regular, caseload, and I always believed in due process of law. And the question defense lawyers always get is, how can you defend somebody that you know or believe to be guilty? And the answer to that is, I believe in due process, that you're not allowed or should not be allowed, the government is not allowed to take away your liberty unless you have had your constitutional rights observed. The right to counsel, the right to a fair trial, the right against self-incrimination, those rights that are indoctrinated into the Bill of Rights.
So at what point did you start taking more serious cases, capital offenses, murder cases?
I started co-counseling with murder cases in about 84. So I'd been there about 4 years. And all told, I handled about 20 capital homicide cases. And from a defense point of view, if you're not in trial and the individual is not facing or not looking at the death penalty, then that's a success if you're not a death penalty advocate, which was the philosophy at that office. So I tried about 11 of them, and I still have one defendant who who is on death row today.
Tell us about Ralph Menzies.
That's Ralph Menzies, and I tried that case in 1988, and it is still in the federal appellate system today. So he's been on death row, 30-something years. The case itself was about that Ralph had gone to a nearby gas station, one of those where the cashier sits in a booth, and had gotten gas and had kidnapped this woman cashier, taken money from the cash register, taken her to his home, and then taken her up Big Cottonwood Canyon, walked her up the side of the mountain, and cut her throat, and she died. Ralph had a really bad history before that. He had committed a robbery of a taxi driver where a shot was fired and that person lost his arm. So Ralph's background was not good. He was a very tough client. He was, and he would say this today, he was pretty demanding, but I got along with him fine. We tried that case, and then the jury found Ralph guilty, but we waived, and when I say we, I had co-counsel, we waived the jury for the penalty phase of that case and tried it before Judge Raymond Uno of the 3rd District Court, who gave him a death penalty sentence. So that was tough. That's been, as I said, still winding its way through the court system, where it's alleged my ineffective assistance of counsel back in 1988. So we'll see what happens. But Ralph and I and others that had capital cases still exchange Christmas cards, and so I feel good about that.
You said he was demanding. Like, what does that mean?
Oh, he would call and say, "Come over here now," and
like to the prison?
Well, no, he was still in the Salt Lake County jail, and we had a hearing and asked the court not to send him back to prison, although he was on parole, so that we'd have better access to him here. But he was in solitary confinement for that. The homicide occurred in 86, and I tried it in 88. So he spent 2 years in the county jail. So he also had a girlfriend, and we were going to call her to testify, and he refused to let her testify. And she might have provided him some help, but maybe some hurt too. So that's the story of Ralph Menzies.
Any others that you had 11. Any others that stick out to you? Any novel cases or?
There was State of Utah versus Julio Valdez, which is the first one I tried as co-counsel to my dear friend Lynn Brown. And he was a young man with no criminal history whatsoever, who had a child with a woman, but he now had a new girlfriend who wanted that former girlfriend and the child gone. And so Julio, who was a U student, took her and shot her up in Bingham Canyon, and then took the baby and put the baby in the Jordan River. And so that case, the jury did not find beyond a reasonable doubt that death was appropriate. And he died a natural death in prison from cancer about 4 years ago. And I was in contact with him. Another one was Stephen Stout. And this was interesting for this reason. Stephen Stout had been convicted of manslaughter in Ohio and had served prison time. Upon getting out of prison, he came here, he married. He and his wife were having problems, and one day he went to his mother-in-law's trailer over in West Valley where he knew there was a gun. And he was getting the gun, we don't know exactly for what, and the mother-in-law and sister-in-law came home, and he shot both of them and killed them. And we tried that as a bench trial, and it was the first time that I'm aware of in the country where childhood PTSD, evidence of that was admitted into a trial, and it was based upon his own traumatic childhood that he was spared the death penalty. Another interesting thing about him is he fled, and he was from West Virginia originally, and they were conducting manhunts up in the hills of West Virginia. He must have been having some help, I don't know. But he then ended up in Mississippi, there on Gulfport, Mississippi, right on the Gulf, where he got a job under another name on an oil rig. And he had a new girlfriend. He happened to be sitting at home with her when a segment of America's Most Wanted comes on, and there he is. And the girlfriend went, whoops. And,
Oh, wow.
and later called authorities, and he was arrested.
Was that after the crimes in Utah or before?
Yes, it was
so then was he brought back to Utah
Yes.
then, and then?
Yes.
So in terms of the PTSD defense, what happened to him that caused that?
Childhood physical and mental abuse.
So was it successful?
Yes, it was successful. I also handled on appeal another one that was kind of interesting. His name was Steve Thurman, and again, these are relationship issues. And he went over to pick up his child from where his ex-wife was staying with her boyfriend, and the child rushed out and got in the back seat, and he put a bomb in there, and the bomb went off and killed the child. And so he was spared the death penalty, but all of those people are doing lifetime prison sentences. So
Why did he have a bomb?
he was going to lure her in there, I think, and detonate it and kill them both. But it didn't happen that way.
So in all these cases, I mean, you're defending these folks, and it's the due process part, but you still have to go through the, what the victims, their families that are left. I mean, did you have any anger towards you for being,
Many times. I was up at a conference at Snowbird once, and I was walking in the parking lot with someone, and this young man came up to me, and he said, "I know you. I will never forgive you. Ralph Menzies killed my mother." And he said, "I've followed your career," and would go in, and had been in courtrooms watching me. So there was some of that.
What did you say to him? Do you remember?
I just said, "I'm sorry about the loss of your mother," and kept walking, and hopefully it was okay.
But did that weigh on you, having those interactions, or you knew you had a job to do?
No, not really. Not really. I can tell you one other kind of funny story, though. I represented a man who had a PhD in chemistry or biochemistry and worked out at Dugway Proving Grounds and with where the nerve gas and all those things are. And it apparently affected him mentally. And he kept showing up in his former wife's house because he thought that's where he belonged, and he'd go back. She'd call the cops and whatever. And finally, he was charged, but with burglary. And I knew that there were mental health issues. So I asked the court. He was committed to the Utah State Hospital for an evaluation. The day of his hearing, when I came back going into court, the staff from the Utah State Hospital came up to me outside in the hallway and said, "We think you should see this before you go into court." And it was a drawing of a naked woman with short red hair tied onto a cross with flames coming up. So anyway, I wasn't particularly concerned, but it was kind of humorous.
So what did you do with that then?
I didn't do anything with it. It was clear he wasn't competent, and so he went back to the Utah State Hospital.
Was he mad at you, or what was the impetus for that? Do you know?
No.
During this time, you were also diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, is that right?
I was diagnosed with MS the year after I graduated from high school.
Oh, wow.
Not high school, law school. And I've maintained to this point. I think there was a long period of time where unless people knew, they didn't know. I've now, it's showing. My voice is raspy because of voice Botox treatments in my throat. I've got tremors now, and my balance is pretty bad. But I just decided it wasn't going to define me, so I haven't let it.
How how has that been received, by others? Has it ever caused any problems for you throughout your entire career?
There was one time I was in a trial in state court, and I was having a relapse, a very bad, my arms and legs were not functioning correctly. My mouth and cheeks were somewhat paralyzed. And very kind Judge James Sawaya, and I went to him and I told him, and he said, "We're done for today, take the day off, go home." I did, and I was much better the next day and resumed the trial. But that's the only time I think it's really affected me. I'm sure people notice or have heard. I don't make it a secret, but it's there. Mm-hmm. I get infusions once a month that my neurologist said if I hadn't had, it wouldn't be good. But I have. So anyway, I'm doing as well as I can be on that.
So it's been over 40 years then? Yeah. Wow, that's remarkable.
You just gave away my age.
5 years. What's after the federal, or after the public defender's office? You switched. You went to the prosecution side.
I had been involved in some Democratic politics, and I was working up at the U doing the trial advocacy course. Scott Matheson Jr. was dean of the law school up there, and I knew him through some Democratic politics. He was becoming the next U.S. attorney. Yes, I said it, U.S. attorney. And I kind of said to him once, well, if there's ever an opening, I might be interested. And the reason I was interested is after so many years at the Defender Office, I felt like, I don't mean this disrespectfully, I knew it all. I felt like I was processing cases rather than, investing myself in the way I should. So Scott Matheson called me up and invited me to come over to his office, where I went to the violent crime section and where I spent the next almost 9 years over there. And the hardest part was the difference in procedure between the state and the federal system. I knew that I had to overcome this perception of myself as a defense lawyer, and I was assigned, first of all, to as a member of the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force. Well, these guys, and they were mostly guys, were not at all pleased to see me over there in their bailiwick. So I knew I had to prove myself to not only Scott and the office staff, but to those federal agents that I worked with. And that worked out very successfully. And I have today very fine friends that are primarily with the FBI and that I'm still in very close contact with. So I ended up head of the violent crime section once Paul Warner became U.S. attorney, and he and I tried together a cross-burning case, which was very interesting, a cross being burned on the home of a black family in Salt Lake, and we successfully prosecuted that and did some other, cases like that. But I enjoyed my time there, but yet I did not have the freedom of my own will there. At the Defender Office, I made my own decisions about how cases were resolved or not. But at the U.S. Attorney's Office, because you have the Department of Justice involved, you have to go through step by step. And to file cases, you have to have the okay of a screening panel. So you've got to be ready. Your case has to be pretty much ready to go for you to file it. And sometimes I know people are critical of the Justice Department for that, but that's the way they operate.
So were you trying as many cases at the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I think I kept track. I tried 16 cases at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So not nearly as many as I had as a defender, but still, there were some big cases. I tried one where there was a bride shopping organization that was soliciting brides, and they'd set up fake weddings for men from the United States. And the women would pay to come illegally into the United States, get a visa, but there, we pulled out all this bridal stuff because they would hold fake weddings, and So anyway, there were some interesting.
So it was a scheme.
A scheme.
Then. So
yes.
then the potential husbands were sort of being defrauded because
Yes.
they weren't actually marrying these women.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was fun.
Yeah. Huh. Any other cases that you can think of that really stuck out to you at the U.S. Attorney's Office?
This one didn't go to trial, but it was interesting. I can't really, you probably remember his name, the guy who in a paraglider flew into the bird's pathway,
Chauncey. Yeah.
And Dell came into court one day, and I was finishing another case. And as a condition of the other fellow's release, I told him he couldn't have any guns on his person or his property. And Del Chauncey stands up and says, "How dare you interfere with his gun rights?" And at that time, I asked the marshals to escort Del out of into their lockup, and he didn't come back till after lunch. And his tone was decidedly different.
Of course. So at some point, though, you were lucky enough to be appointed to the bench.
I was. And, you know, I really never thought that this was going to happen to me. You know,
But you wanted it.
I wanted it. Little girl from Oklahoma who had some secretarial skills. I didn't believe it was going to ever happen. But it did, and that led to 16 very happy years over here in the court. And Judge Warner, I call him the junior judge because although he'd been my boss, he came over here a year or two after me. Mm-hmm. So he's the junior judge. And there were 4 of us here, 1 part-time in St. George, and we've handled all the criminal and civil matters that have come in during that period of time.
But you gave up the trial work.
I gave up the trial work, and it was hard because you've been an advocate for so long. You know, you kind of want to put words in lawyers' mouths, and you don't necessarily get what you would have said. My other, though, proudest accomplishments over at this court are the establishments of the first 2 reentry courts. As you mentioned, we have one of the first federal drug courts in the country and the first mental health court in the federal system. And that, I think we started those both in 2007. And so they're still going strong today. Since that time, my peers, magistrate judges, have also started an Indian country court. Judge Pede goes twice a month to the Navajo Nation and or the Ute Nation and holds a court for Native participants in the federal system. And Judge Warner, of course, started the Veterans Court, which is still going strong. There's also another court where individuals can, if they successfully complete, their charges are dismissed. Now, in drug court and mental health court, that wasn't the case. They had already been convicted when they came into my courts. So,
how do you start a court like that?
The idea came, well, the state had already established theirs. My husband was one of the first case managers for the Utah State Court Drug Court. So I knew of those models, and there were several people who had come to federal probation that had come from the state courts, and we talked and said, why can't we do it here? Mm-hmm. And so I asked permission of then Chief Judge Tina Campbell for us to prepare a model to these two courts. And we did. As a group, there were representatives of the federal defenders, representatives of the U.S. Attorney, representatives of the Marshal Service, as well as probation and parole. And over a year or so, we, using the state court's model, but adapting those models to our own needs, prepared that court. Our judges were overwhelmingly in favor of it. And I never really got a vote on it. They said, sure, go ahead. And so they're still going strong now, 20 years later.
So when you were in the state system, did you participate in those programs, or you just sort of got exposure to how they worked?
No,
in other
I got
ways?
exposed. They didn't exist when I was doing trial work. No, they didn't exist until I was over at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
So tell us how they work. Like, what's different about these courts? What are they?
They're supportive courts. They're informal in nature. People come to court, they support one another. Sobriety is their goal. They're hooked up with treatment. They're hooked up with housing services, workforce employment services, services that are available in our community. And, so they're hooked up.
But the goal is to, as you mentioned, they're already been convicted of their crimes, and so they're
to have their period of probation or supervised release shortened. And sometimes people are in the federal system, we don't have parole. We have what's called supervised release. It's essentially the same thing. But some people come out of prison with 15 years of supervised release to do. If they complete the drug court program, then it's possible that could be terminated, or 5 or 6 years cut off of that term of supervision. But the goal is to provide a reentry into the community services. It's RISE stands for reentry, I can't remember, like RISE courts, our RISE courts, reentry through sustainable efforts. Anyway, so I'm very proud of those courts, and I'm proud of those judges that have kept them on.
How do you qualify for behavioral health court versus drug court?
You have to have, well, they used to say you had to have an Axis 1 diagnosis, but now under the mental health court rules, there is no longer an Axis system, but you have to be severely and persistently mentally ill. And to qualify, you have to, in most cases, have a substance abuse problem, although that's not always true. And you're coming out, let's say, of a federal penitentiary where you've been locked up, like Burnt Murphy was, for years and years without having received adequate services. So the purpose is to ease reentry.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any idea how many people have been through your courts?
I'd say somewhere in the nature of 500. Something like that.
And then once they're finished, do they come back?
I just had a drug court person contact me a couple of weeks ago saying that he wanted to give back, and so I took him to the drug court that Judge Romero is doing now, and he's going to meet with them each week, kind of as a peer counselor. So, you know, there are some great stories, not always, but there are some really good stories that have come out of this effort.
And do you see it expanding? I mean, it already has in other places, but
Well, but you're always bound by your resources. And so I don't know that I see us expanding to more courts than we have right now, but their continuation is certainly important.
what do you miss most about being on the bench?
I miss the interaction. I miss coming into my chambers every day and having you and my other law clerk and my chief deputy clerk. You know, I miss that interaction. We did, however, in that regard, entertain Sonia Sotomayor
You did.
in our chambers once. She came to Utah to give a speech up at the U to kids, and I was selected to invite her to come here. I met her one time at a seminar. She didn't remember me, but anyway, she accepted the invitation, and she used our chambers as her office, and met with all the judges, and we had a delightful time, and all got our picture taken with Judge Romero. Oh, I'd like to go back to drug court for a minute.
Yeah, okay.
You know, you get to be a certain age and you just say, why not? I got a tattoo on my ankle of my horse, and it was done by one of our drug court clients who was a tattoo artist. And so I go, why not? You know, so I miss that. I miss the daily court routine. I miss the people here. I do miss it. But I like not getting up so early also.
One thing you haven't really talked too much about is the civil docket, which is a
We
large
haven't.
part.
It is.
I mean, you came from such a strong criminal defense, criminal prosecution background. How did you adjust to a totally different set of rules? And
Well, Leslie, that was part you and part Matt Willett. No, as I've said, I'm not a researcher and writer. I don't know much, or didn't know much about civil law, and so I had to learn. And I learned with the help of those who had better backgrounds in that regard. And we had some fairly big cases in that regard. One of those was IBM versus SCO, and it was a big technology patent case, and I imposed in that one a sanction against 2 lawyers for quite a bit of money.
yeah, there was another one too that you've been quite famous for, BYU versus Pfizer, and there was a large discovery sanction in that one.
There
too.
was, I think that was about
$800,000.
$800,000 sanction for lawyers who weren't doing what their oaths require them to do. So there was that one.
Well, is it hard to kind of sanction your peers or, other lawyers, or how do you, I mean, that takes a certain amount of,
Not in those cases. It wasn't that hard because that was really the only thing that one could do is to, money is what's important, most important in civil cases, as opposed to criminal cases where liberty is the most important thing. So you kind of hit them where it hurts.
yeah. Did you notice any difference in criminal lawyers versus civil lawyers and how they interacted with you in the court? And
Actually, I thought that criminal lawyers are more professional with each other than are civil lawyers. Again, because, well, criminal lawyers have to see each other all the time. Civil lawyers don't, and so they can, hold these grudges. And that's kind of what it is. And I think that criminal lawyers just didn't want to incur the wrath each day of a judge who was going to call their boss and have them come in for a talk or something like that. So that was the difference I found. But one of, we haven't mentioned, but I've always had kind of a judicial philosophy that no one else would have, and I'll explain it. It's called bob and weave, bob and weave. And the point of that is you have to be prepared and ready for anything and everything. And so it is, it's a good approach. It says be ready for whatever may come along. So I've tried to do that.
One thing that's always amazed me about you is your ability to sort of take all of these things that you've got going on and never appear to be stressed out.
That's good cover. That's good cover. Although I try to remain that's where horses come in. That's kind of my freedom. And if I can go get on a horse, I wouldn't dare get on a pair of skis, but give me your horse. And that's I can take big, deep breaths with that. But I just decided with these things I couldn't let them, get me down, keep me from doing what I wanted to do with life.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Bob and weave. Do you have any regrets in your career?
No.
Anything you wish that would have came out differently, or in case you would have won that you lost, or vice versa?
Oh, there were always some of those, but regrets in terms of life choices, no, I don't have any regrets. I've been pretty happy and pleased with how things have gone, and lucky. I feel really lucky.
Well, from Burnt Murphy to the PTSD defense, how has the criminal justice system changed? In your career, it seems it's changed slightly. Has it? Has it not?
Not that much. The Burnt Murphy matter got sorted out, and that will never happen again. But beyond that, I don't know that there's too much change. There's talk about criminal justice reform. There has been some of that in terms of reduction of sentence in drug cases, but not significantly. I purposefully would hope our legislatures would take up these gun control issues and, help us all with that. Those mass shootings are pretty horrible. And my friend from San Antonio was just here last week. Uvalde, Texas is only like 80 miles from San Antonio. So it kind of hit all of them pretty hard as well. So Texas is more conservative than Utah, believe it or not.
Yeah. What are your parting thoughts for the next generation of lawyers coming up?
Well, one of my proudest moments was when I, who never knew my class standing, was asked to give the commencement address at the University of Utah College of Law. And so I talked to the students then. I'm not particularly deep, But I said, find your passion, follow your heart. Don't do what you want to do, and where your passion leads you. Don't let money define you, and you can do that. We need to keep opening up room for all, but I think we're doing a better job of that. And we just need to keep pushing it on. Go girls.